I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized for such time.
Well, let's just set the record straight. Only two countries have privatized. That's Canada and Great Britain. And in the case of Great Britain, the government had to, and the taxpayers had to come in and bail out the corporation. And in the case of Canada, it was a very prolonged transition, 7 or 8 years, which would set back next gen for a generation. So those were not without their problems. There's a MITRE report which looks at all of the other conversions around the world which were government corporations, not private corporations. So there are only two that have gone to private corporations. All the other countries that have changed over have gone to government corporations. You know, they also had transition issues. I mean, it's very instructive, and we haven't held hearings on the MITRE report or the recent GAO report that point to the potentials for disruption, and seeing that this proposal won't cause the sorts of disruption that happened in other countries. And on the issue of mandatory spending, we would still, as the authorizers, have the authority to direct that agency, much more so than we'll have if we give it to a private corporation. And according to the most recent CBO report, they deem that this corporation will be mandatory spending, and it'll be a private corporation which will have the authority to tax. So we're giving authority to a private corporation to establish some sort of a fee or tax structure. They can't tax, so it'll be fees of some sort. A fee for the amount of space that you take up in an airplane when you're flying over the country. Who knows what those fees will be? We don't know, which would be very potentially disruptive and potentially disadvantage other users of the system, which is why that you have all the regional airlines who fly 62% of the flights every day opposed to this bill. You have Delta Airlines, the largest airline, opposed to this bill. You have the Airline Owners and Pilots Association opposed to this bill. You have business aviation opposed to this proposal because they don't know what this fee structure will be and how it might or might not discriminate against them. So what I proposed is you keep the existing structure, which everybody can live with. Now, the airlines don't like it because they say every time I buy an airline ticket and I pay the excise tax, the airlines say that's their money. I say, no, that's actually a tax that's levied on me as a passenger, which goes to the government. It's not their money. But they think they can create a system where it won't be taking money out of their pocket, which they say the excise taxes do, but I don't know where the $10 billion or so a year is going to come to. And then, of course, the Office of Management and Budget also in this report found last week that with mandatory spending by this private corporation, that there will be a $19,848 million deficit over a 10-year period. Let me repeat that. Mandatory spending by a private corporation assessing some sort of new fee structure on users of the system, including passengers, and the OMB says that would increase the federal deficit by $19.848 billion. That, of course, the majority is always free to waive the rules, and they can ignore that. I mean, the rules have been waived numerous times to create more deficit around here, despite the discussion on the other side that they want to address the deficit. Whenever we eliminate taxes, we waive the rules and pretend that actually eliminating taxes will raise money or it's budget neutral. And I guess in this case, they could waive the rules and say the mandatory spending by the private corporation that will lead to additional deficit doesn't matter and it doesn't exist. I would reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Oregon reserves the balance.